Okay, so as we get started here, couple of things. First off, any questions from last week? Any questions at all from anything we did last week? Everybody good? Okay. Secondly, here's why I want you guys to have the calculator. Just so you know, okay, when we're working with uh, annuities and things like that, here are the equations for working with an annuity. Okay. If you don't have a present or future value interest factor table like what is in the appendix in the back of the book, and you're just straight working with the equations, so you can see the present value is the cash flow times 1 minus 1 over the rate to the t, divide all that by r. Here's how to calculate the cash flow if you want to do all that, folks. The tools are so much easier. Okay, but here's the equations. Have at it if you want them. Okay. So again, I don't expect you to know those equations. I'm just showing you what your calculator is doing for you. Okay. The rest of you, if you would, go ahead and get your cameras on so that way we can see, and it just it gives me an idea of if everybody's kind of getting it. I can see if somebody has the deer in the headlight look or anything like that. Okay. Um, so let's just jump right into this, and we'll carry on where we left off. So we were talking about annuities Thursday. Okay. What's an annuity again? Can you guys remind me? Or do you remember what an annuity is? Jack, do you remember what an annuity is?
An annuity is a time value money where you have over a set amount of time, equal periods for a set amount of time.
There you go. Good job. Hey, Malcolm, by the way, after class, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I meant to shoot you an email. I want to ask you about Jeeps.
Okay.
So, yeah, like Malcolm said, an annuity, set payments, set intervals for a finite period of time. Now, we talked about two different types of annuities, right? What's the difference between an ordinary annuity and an annuity due?
Annuities when the payment takes place.
What was that, Matt?
When the payment takes place, so at the beginning or the end of the period.
Okay, James, what were you going to say?
Same thing. Annuities are due at the end of the period. Annuity due is at the beginning of the period.
Exactly. Okay. So ordinary annuity, the payment occurs at the end of the period, which is our assumption of when all payments occur, unless we're told otherwise. Okay. Annuities due, the payment occurs at the beginning of the period. All right. Everybody good with that? And we calculated present value, future value, we calculated time, we calculated payment, we calculated interest rate. So hopefully you guys are all good with it. Now, let's move on to the next thing. Now, the next thing is a perpetuity. Okay. Perpetuity is just what it said, kind of like perpetual. Okay. Keeps going. So with a perpetuity is equal payments over equal intervals for an infinite period of time. It means it goes on forever, never ends. Okay. So the equation for a perpetuity is the present value of the perpetuity equals the cash flow divided by the interest rate. Okay. So basically what's happening with the perpetuity is we have a principal amount, the present value. It's drawing a rate of interest, and our payments are just the interest off of that. So we're never dipping into the principal amount. So as long as we're not dipping into the principal amount and decreasing that principal amount, we can get those payments forever. Does that make sense? Is everybody good with that? Okay. Now, sometimes we have a growing perpetuity. A growing perpetuity is something like what you will see with Social Security. You hear people who, maybe your grandparents, you'll hear them talking about cost of living allowance with Social Security, a COLA, COLA, cost of living allowance. And all that is every now and then the government will look at the cost of living and inflation and adjust their payment accordingly. Okay. So with a growing perpetuity, same equation, the present value is the cash flow, but it's the cash flow divided by the rate of return minus whatever the growth rate is in the payment. Okay. Now, if you notice the growth rate is 0, we are back to our initial equation up here of a regular perpetuity. Okay. And we'll come back to this equation right here when we get into stocks and preferred stocks and things like that. So we'll come back to this in a little bit, in a couple of chapters. Okay. So let's talk about perpetuities real quick. Let's say after you graduate that you guys are so thrilled with your education and you're making so much money that you want to give back to the school, and you say, hey, I want somebody to have the same opportunity I'm having. And so you give the school $50,000 and you tell the school, I want to have a $1,250 or a $1,250 scholarship. If that's the case, what's the rate of return the school is getting on your donation? So somebody calculate R for me there. What do you get?
2.5%.
2.5%? Is that what you said, Noah? Is that right? Is everybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Noah. And double check these guys. Like I said, I made these up, so I don't have a pat answer on these, okay? So now Noah comes back and he says, you know what? I'm going to donate $75,000 to the school. And the school says, Noah, for that donation, that amount of money, we can get a 4% return, okay? So what is Noah's Memorial Scholarship at that point in time? How much is a scholarship worth?
It'll be $33.75.
$33.75. Okay. So that would be the amount of Noah's Memorial Scholarship, right? People 50 years from now be like, I don't know who Noah was, but thank God he did that and donated because now he can get this scholarship and go to school, right? Now, if he comes back and says, folks, I want a $2,500 scholarship, and they say we can get a 3.5% return, then how much does Noah have to donate to the school? What's his donation to the school at this point?
$71,428.57.
428.50, did you say, James?
57 cents.
57? Okay. There you go. Now, the key thing, folks, make sure you move the decimal place, okay? If you don't move the decimals, you get something like, what is that, $714 or something like that, okay? So make sure you move those decimals on the percentage. So, folks, that's everything that we can calculate with a perpetuity. Unlike an annuity where we're using the calculator and using our buttons there, the perpetuity, you have to use this equation. But that's how simple it is, okay? Is everybody good? Any questions on perpetuity? Okay, let's move on. So we talked about, what makes this possible. Obviously, it's the principal amount that we're donating, the cash flow, but the biggest thing is the rate, Okay. And folks, I've been asking you about rates on your accounts. It's the beginning of February. Last week was the end of January. So hopefully all of you got your bank statements from your bank and balanced your checkbooks out and things like that. So let's talk about interest rates. Okay. And again, I'm going to keep asking you, do you know what the rates are on your account? Now, so what's the rate on your savings account? Anybody know?
It's like 0.01%.
0.01. There you go, Pearson. Okay. What about your, anybody have a student loan? What's the rate on your student loan rate?
Mine varies from like 10% to like 18%.
On your student loan, Malcolm, or credit card?
Student loan.
Student loan? Okay. So Malcolm's varies. Okay. Now let's talk about that rate. Now, Malcolm, when you said 10 to 18%, right? What
Yeah,
is that rate? What do they call that rate?
the annual percentage rate.
Annual percentage rate, right? That is your APR. Okay. Do you know what that means? Or, I mean, other than annual percentage rate, what is the annual percentage rate?
It's how much they charge per year. It's not the like monthly, like how much gets added each month. It's the overall how much interest is accrued over the year.
Kinda. You're close, right? You mentioned monthly rate, so you got into a couple of key points with your definition there. Okay. Your annual percentage rate is what is called your nominal rate. Okay. And what that means is that's just the stated rate. Okay. That's the rate that they legally have to tell you. So when Malcolm goes to sign that paperwork, they look at him and go, hey, Malcolm, this is the rate on your loan. Okay. Now, and Malcolm, from what you said, it sounds like your rate's what they call an adjustable rate. A lot of times you hear ARM, especially when you're talking about houses,
Yeah.
adjustable rate mortgage or something like that.
I have a few different because I transferred here from the University of Alabama. So I have a few different student rates. Basically every year I had to take out a new private student loan.
Okay. Good.
Not
Well, at
very
least
fun.
you got smart enough to get out of the Tide State there to get a good education. You had a good football team. You came to a good football team, but the education level hopefully went up for you, or at least I think it did. I'm just messing with you. All right. But our nominal rate. Now, Malcolm, you touched on this a little bit. How do we get our nominal rate? How do they get that APR, their stated rate? Anybody know? Our APR is equal to our periodic rate times the number of periods per year. Okay. So if you remember the other day, we were talking about our calculator, and we said the calculator takes the interest rate. We had the interest rate per year, and we divide that by what we called M, the multiples periods of that year, right? So if we look at this, let's just use the 18 because that math is easy to do and it works out. So Malcolm said he had an 18% APR, right? So if we have 18% APR, actually, let me move that. Let me put this in the line with our equation here. So if Malcolm has 18% APR, and we know that's 12 periods per year, that means his periodic rate, and this is the per month rate, is how much? It's 1.5%. Okay. Now, let's talk about this for just a minute. Let's say, so this is Malcolm's student loan. So if January 1st, he took $100 out on his student loan, okay? And he didn't pay anything back over the course of the year. At the end of the year, according to the APR, how much would he expect his bill to be?
150.
$118, right? 18% of the 100. But is that actually what he's going to owe? Why is that, Malcolm? You're shaking your head.
Oh, I'm just laughing because I wish it was $100.
I bet. Okay. He would owe more than that, right? So let's think about this and let's understand why. Remember back in chapter 5, when we took in problem 18, we took that $5,500 payment that we did in the problem. We invested it at 10%, and after 45 years, it was worth $400,000. What took that $5,500 up to $400,000?
It accrues the interest monthly. So like you pay 1.5 on the first month, and then you pay 1.5 on the interest from the last month plus the principal.
Exactly, right? When we talked about interest, we said there was simple interest and compound interest, right? And what took that 5,500 to the 400,000 was the compound interest. Well, the same thing's happening when we're in debt, right? So if he doesn't make a payment in January, he's going to have $1.50 in interest. Okay. Well, that $1.50 is going to gain interest in February, March, on through December, along with the $100, right? So really what happens here is what we get, and what you actually pay is this right here, what we call an effective annual rate. So this is the rate with the effect of that compounding the periodic rate each month, month after month after month for the course of the year, okay? So our equation to find the effective annual rate is the effective annual rate is 1 plus my APR divided by my periods per year. That raised to an exponent of the periods per year minus 1. So if we were looking at Malcolm's equation here, okay, that would be 1 plus 0.18 over 12 raised to the 12 minus 1. Okay. So we could do that whole function there. Okay. Now we could do this equation, but and remember, folks, this would use our y to the x function on our calculator. Quite honestly, I don't want to do that. Couple of things. I got to remember to move the decimal up here and things like that and make sure I have that right. Our calculator will do this for us. So let's, oh, and I figured out how to zoom the calculator out. So this will help us quite a bit. So let's talk about this for just a second, and let's look at it on our calculator, okay? So if you notice down here above our number 2, we see ICONV, okay? That stands for interest conversion. Notice it's not on a button, it's on the base of our calculator. So what type of a function is that?
Second
Function, right? Thank you, Pearson. So it's a second function. So I'm going to hit second interest conversion. Okay. Notice this says nominal rate. So what was our nominal rate? Our nominal rate is our APR, or the stated rate. So in this case for Malcolm, it was 18%. So I'm going to do 18 and enter. Okay. I'm going to use my toggle switches here, buttons, and you can go either way. You can go up or you can go down, doesn't matter. Compounding periods per year, 12, because it's monthly, okay? And then I just need to compute my effective rate. So if this is Malcolm's loan, he's not actually paying 18%. Over the course of the year, he's paying so the effective rate, 19 point, what was that? 5.618. So he's actually paying 1.5% more than what is stated to him. Okay.
Do you mind showing that on the calculator one more time?
Yes, Sophia, no problem.
Thank you.
So I'm going to clear it out just to start from scratch there. Okay. So Sophia, if we look, and let me get out of this. So here's my calculator, right? If I look at it, here's my interest conversion over the number 2 button. So it's a second interest conversion. Okay. So that brings up, what's my nominal rate? The nominal rate we said was 18%. So 18 and enter. Make sure we're using our enter button, not our equals math function button. Okay. I toggle up. Compounding periods per year is 12. So I'm going to put in 12. For monthly, if this was weekly, I'd put 350 or 52 in. If it was daily, I'd put 365 or whatever. Okay. I just toggle up one more time. EFF, effective rate, effective annual rate. I'm just going to hit compute there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So in this example, if Malcolm put the $100 on January 1st and didn't make any payments, at the end of the year, instead of $118, he actually owes $119.57. Guys, excuse me 1 second. This is my kids. I hate to do this. Hey, what's up? Yeah, they have learning. No, they're online. Yep. Sorry, I checked on my kids earlier with the power out. I wanted to make sure they were okay. So $119.57. Is everybody good with that? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, folks, quite honestly, this is why people who are in debt are like, man, I don't understand why I can't get out of debt. I'm making payments on my loans. My interest rate's only 18%. Well, it's not 18%. It's 19 and a half. Okay. And think about it. If you have bad credit, your interest rate's higher. So guess what the effect is? It's even worse. So let's go back. Let's say you had 25% interest, right? Look at what happens. You're paying 3% more.
How did we
Okay?
go from 19 to 119?
One more time.
How did we go from 19 to 119?
Well, this is the interest rate, right?
Okay.
Ashley?
Yeah, I
said
just
if you-
I just missed that part.
Yeah. Well, just to clarify, in case anybody else, remember we said if he put $100 on it January 1st and didn't make any payments on it, this would be his balance December 31st. Okay. Good question though. Thank you. So people that are in worse credit situations, this curve is even worse. Okay. Now think about this though. If we're investing, it's working for us, right? So that's what took our $5,500 to $400,000 in problem 18. But if we're in debt, it's working against us. The effect of that compounding interest. Okay. So that's why people who are in debt are like, I don't understand. I'm making payments. I can't get out of debt. Two things. One, they don't understand the effects of the compounding on their interest rate. And two, they aren't making big enough payments on the principal. They're just making the minimum payment or a little over minimum, right? And don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with that, but you got to keep chipping away. Okay. All right. Is everybody good there? Question? All right. So let's do an example. I love this example, especially this time of the year. Unfortunately, you guys aren't getting spring break this year. But let's say you were, okay? We're getting spring break and it's the end of January. We know tax time's right around the corner. So I'm going to use my taxes. I'm going to do my taxes early and use my refund to pay for my spring break. That way I can get the frozen umbrella drinks at the beach and all that good stuff, right? But you know how it is. We're getting ready to have an exam. You're here at courses. We're giving you tests and homework and papers and projects, and you kind of forget about it. So James is sitting there going, oh man, spring break's next week. I didn't do my taxes. But he sees like Jackson Hewitt, H&R Block, all the tax companies will give you an advance on your refund. So James is like, hey, I'm going to use that cash. I'm going to go get that done. And that way I have the cash to go to spring break. Right? So he goes down, he gets his taxes done, and they tell him, James, you're due a $978 refund. And we'll file that for you, and you'll get your taxes, you'll get your refund in 3 weeks. And James says, hey, I heard you had this advance thing. We're going on spring break. Me and my buddies, we want to go down to the beach. And they say, not a problem. We can give you an advance on that, and we'll give you $928 today. And you just sign this release that we get to keep your refund check. Is James worried about the $50? Why not, Kyle? What's his thought process?
He needs the money now.
Yeah, he's thinking, man, me and my buddies are going to the beach, frozen drinks, girls in bikinis, $50, not a problem. Hit the road, right? Okay, so let's think about this. So if we put it on our timeline here, he's going to get $928 right now. If he waited until he got his taxes, he'd get $978. Okay, and he has to wait for 3 weeks for that to happen. So what I'm looking for is effectively what interest rate is H&R Block charging him to give him this quote advance, or in essence, it's a loan, if you want to be honest with you. Okay. So let's look at this 3-week period here for just a minute. In chapter 5, our periods were a year, right? What we did Thursday when we started chapter 6 is we broke that up into months. Okay, we're going to keep breaking this up. But when we look at 3 weeks, is 3 weeks a full month? No. It's part of a year. So when we're looking at our periods per year, what do you think we want them to be able to solve for this interest rate? We can't use 12 because 3 weeks isn't quite months, right?
You want to be
We could
52?
Go ahead. Somebody was going to say something. James?
Oh, yeah. So you need 52 periods per year.
Okay. We could use 52, meaning weeks, but this is kind of like 3 weeks, right? So there's 52 periods within that 1 year. Okay. We're using 3 of those. All right.
Days.
What's that, Matt?
Days.
Now, we're not going to use days because we still want to stick to our years here. Okay. So what I would do for me, okay, this isn't quite 1 month and it's a funky part of a year. So I do my periods per year as 1. And what that's going to give me is the weekly or periodic rate. Okay. So we're done here. I'm going to clear this out because we're going to come back to that in just a minute. Let's quit that. Okay. If we look at our periods per year, I want that to be 1 because what I'm looking for is the periodic rate or the rate for that 1 week period. Okay. So let's walk through this. I have 3 periods. I'm looking for my interest rate. The present value is 928. Okay. If James waits, he gets 978. So the interest rate they're charging him is 1.7647 a week. Okay. Does that sound bad?
Can you do that one more time?
Yes. Okay. Hang on, my kids are blowing me up here. All right. Which part? I'm sorry. Oh, the whole thing. Gotcha. Sorry. Let me clear that out and reset that. Okay. So remember, we're trying to find our periodic rate. We want weeks. So I changed my periods per year to 1. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. So I have 3 periods. Here's my N. So I have 3 weeks. So 3 is N. Okay. I'm looking for the interest rate. James got 928 now. Okay. As I said, if you make present value negative, you won't have any problems, right? There is no payment on it. If he waited to get his taxes, he'd get 978. So we're computing interest rate. Is everybody good?
I'm getting 21/17/58.
Saunders, did you check, is your periods per year 1? There you go. Okay. All right. So 1.76 is my periodic rate. Okay. Now, do I want my periodic rate? What do I want to convert it to? I want my APR. I want my annual percentage rate. So how do I get that? Take my periodic rate times the number of periods per year, and that gives me my APR. So what's my APR?
$91.76.
91.76. So now, James, does that $50 start seeming a little different now?
A little bit.
Well, honestly, no, because you're down at the beach drinking umbrella drinks, right, with all your buddies. So you're still like, who cares? But the tax company is like, James, you got any buddies that need this? And bring your friends and we'll help them. And that way, all of you can go to the beach, right? Now, if that's the annual rate, let's convert that to our effective rate. Or the EAR here. Okay. Now, quite honestly, we could do it using our equation 1 plus 91.76 over 52 to the 52 minus 1. We could do that. Quite honestly, I don't want to do that. So we'll just use the calculator and do it the easy way. So I'm going to hit interest conversion. My nominal rate is 91.76. Okay. My compounding periods per year weekly, so that's 52. And then I'm going to compute my effective rate. So the effective rate is 148, and so the effective annual rate there is 148 point, what was that, 3324, I think it was. Yeah. Okay. So that is what the company is actually getting. Okay. You ever notice they don't tell you that on the commercials? What do they tell you? Just 50 bucks, right? 50 bucks out of 1,000. Nobody's going to think about that. Nobody's going to think twice about that. All they're going to think about is, let's go do it, right? Who is this really targeted to? Or who does this take advantage of? Let me put it that way.
People who need money like it.
fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who need money back, right? Hey, what do they tell you in the commercial? Hey, your car broke down. You got bills to pay. You know, the transmission and things like that. Unfortunately, this is geared towards people who don't understand finance or who don't understand how to handle their money. It's very predatory. quite honestly, I think it's bad business. But like the old saying in our days, it said, "Don't hate the player, hate the game," right? So they're just playing the game by the game's rules, you know? So they're taking advantage of people who don't understand. That's one thing I like about North Carolina. We don't have pink slip loans, car title loans, where people are going and getting a loan on their car. And if they don't make the payment, they come take their car and stuff like that. To me, that's very predatory. That's one thing I really, really like about North Carolina. We kind of look out for folks in a roundabout way, okay? But that's why you guys have to understand finance, so we don't take advantage of this, right? By the way, do you know what the maximum amount a credit card company can charge you? It's 30%. So like when you go to stores, you go to get your Lowe's hardware card when you're working on your house, or you go to Kohl's or Belk's and they go, hey, if you apply for one of our cards, we'll give you a 10% discount. This is why. Think about this. If your rate was 30%, right, and they're charging you monthly, they're getting 34% return. Why do you think they want you to put stuff on their card? One, because they're getting that interest rate. The other thing is, and Malcolm, I'll use this. Last year, I went and bought a car for my kid, and I was going to pay cash for it. And they're like, well, you can put it on your credit card, and you'll get the bonus and stuff. You'll get your points and this, that, and the other. And we were kind of haggling, and we were off by about $1,000. And they're like, well, put this on your card and all. And I'm like, look, guys, I'm a finance person. I'm not doing that, right? Part of it is they know 95% of the people don't pay their credit card off each month. So they're going to rack up on interest charges, okay? So, and I'm not against credit cards by any means, but if you use them right, you got to understand who you are and what your purchasing habits are, okay? Is everybody good on interest rates and effective rates and things like that? APR, any questions there? Okay. Megan says, nope, she's good. So we'll move on. Okay. All right. Let's talk about loans. Okay. So we're going to talk about loans here. We're going to talk about three different kinds. The first kind is what is called a pure discount loan. Okay. This is where the borrower pays a lump sum at maturity. Okay. An example of this is the EE savings bonds that we talked about in chapter 5. If you remember that, I think it was problem 16. So the bond had a face value of $50. And when we purchased it, we paid $25 for it, right? We had to hold it for 20 years. So in the time that we purchased it at $25, in the 20 years to maturity, no payments were made on that. But if we were holding the bond at maturity, we got the $50, okay? So that's an example of a pure discount loan. All right, everybody good there? Any questions there? Okay, that's pretty simple. The next one is an interest-only loan. Okay, so with interest only, the borrower just pays interest with each payment, okay? And then there's a lump sum, what they call a balloon payment, at maturity, okay? So what happens here is that at maturity, you owe the principal amount, okay? A good example here is corporate bonds. Corporate bonds are nothing but loans to the government or to a business entity. We'll get into this in the next chapter, along with more on interest rates. But you make a loan to a company, they're going to pay you interest each month or each quarter or semi-annually or annually, whatever the case may be. And then when the loan matures in 10, 20, 30 years, they're going to give you the face value of the bond, okay? And again, we'll talk more about that in the next chapter. The next one is an amortized loan. Okay. Here, the borrower pays both interest and principal with each payment. Okay. Now, a couple of things. Notice the root of the word, amortize. Mort, what does that stand for? I don't expect you to really know it, unless you're an English major or something like that. Debt, okay? Basically, what this means is you pay the loan till it dies, or you die, whichever comes first. So there's a couple ways this goes. First, whoops, not purple, don't like purple. One, the first part is the first example is you have a fixed amount of principal payment. Okay. And the interest varies each month. Okay. So the payment varies each month. Okay. So that's the first type of amortized loan. Quite honestly, folks, you rarely see that. That's very rare that you see that type of loan. Why do you think that would be? What's the downside to this type of payment?
The borrower isn't getting a lot of money.
No, not quite.
You never know exactly how much your payment is going to be because the interest varies each month.
Exactly.
Each
Malcolm.
period.
Notice we're paying a set fixed amount, right? So like on Malcolm's loan, let's say he was paying $200 a month, and that's going to the principal. Well, since his principal amount is changing from month to month, and that means the amount of interest is changing month to month. So one month he's paying $259. The next month he's paying $257, then $254, then $251. So each month could you imagine trying to budget that? That's just a nightmare. So you don't see that situation very often. What you do have is a second example here, okay? We have a fixed payment each month. Okay, so in this case, Malcolm's payment would be $275, okay? But in that payment, the principal and interest vary. Okay, that way it's easy for him to budget. He knows, hey, I'm going to pay $275 each month. Boom, done. Month to month to month, January through December. Okay, so let's look at that for just a second. I have this amortization chart that I pulled up to show you guys is on As You Learn under Chapter 6. This is something I made, so you're welcome to take it, keep it, play with it. it comes in handy for a lot of things. So let's look at, we talked about car loans the other day. So we were talking car loans with Malcolm the other day. And so 5 years, 25,000, I think we said 1.9% interest, right? And there's the payment, if I remember right, the 437.10, that's what we calculated, okay? And we calculated the total amount paid. So 26,000, we were right there, okay? Notice what's happening each month to the interest. The interest goes down a little bit each month, all right? And the principal amount goes up a little bit each month, but our payment is constant. So this is easy to budget. We vary this a little bit, okay? So there's our car loan. Let's say our student loan, the average student loan's 24,000 in debt from ASU. Malcolm, you transferred, so who knows what Alabama did to you?
$38,000 a year.
How much?
38 a year.
Woo! Boy, no wonder you want to get out of that. The 24 is total for an average ASU grad. I got that from the financial aid office the other day. Okay. I think those student loans are about, let's just say, I think they're about 4.25, right? So if you bought the house at 437, now you got your student loan at 245. So you're up to 440, what is that? 685. And you haven't even talked about rent or anything like that, right? So that would be kind of what you're looking at as a student loan. Again, the amount goes down each month on your interest. The amount of principal goes up each month. Okay. Now notice when we start this out, okay, we have our beginning balance. We calculated our payment. Okay. We have our interest, and then we have the principal amount. Now notice the remaining balance, which is what we're going to start with the next month, is our beginning balance minus the amount of principal. Okay. And that's how we get this number right here. If you look at our interest, notice earlier we said the interest was per period. I think it was Malcolm that said that too. The interest is per period. So if you look up here, we have the interest, B6, divided by the number of periods, B5. So we have the 4.25 divided by 12. So this is our interest per period, okay? It's going to be very important when we do the project that you understand that. And we'll talk more, we can get in more into this later when we talk about the project. Let's talk about homes. So we talked about the house the other day too. I think this was the first or second day of class. We said the average house was about 250,000, 30 years to pay on that. Interest rates are down, so let's go down to 3.25%. Okay. Look at the payment on your house. It's $1,088, almost $1,100. Notice, okay, the interest again is going down each month. The principal amount's going up each month. Okay. A couple of big things to notice. Here's your $250,000 house. Look what you pay total for your house after 30 years. $382,000. So you're paying almost 50% interest added to the home. Okay. So this is why we say you never get a loan for a depreciating asset, because hopefully when you pay this $250,000 house off, the value of that house after 30 years is hopefully going to be worth more than the $382,000. Okay. So that way you've got an asset worth more than what you paid for. A couple of things to take note of. Let's go down. Let's look and look right here. So we're going to look after 120 payments. So we've been paying on our house for 10 years. Okay. So we've been paying on it a third of the time. Notice we just now paid off a little over 50,000, 60,000, right? So we're between a fifth and a quarter of the way of paying off our house. Look what's happened to our payments. They're starting to break even as far as interest and principal, or they flip. So we're paying more in principal than we did in interest finally, okay? Let's look at 20 years. After 20 years of paying on the house, notice we finally broke over halfway. Okay, we still owe 112. Kind of crazy, right? So when we look at that, what does that tell us about when we have an amortized loan, whether it's car, student loan, home loan? What are we paying off first? Are we paying the principal off or the interest off?
Interest.
We're paying the interest off, right? So after 40 or 20 years, we're only about halfway there. And then those last 10 years is really when we start kicking in and paying off the principal amount, right? Now, let's go back up here. Why do I harp on you guys about your interest rates? Well, let's look, okay? So let's say instead of Malcolm having an adjustable rate on his student loan, let's say it's on your house. And this is what you hear referred to as an ARM, A-R-M, an adjustable rate mortgage, okay? Let's say interest rates start going up. Right now, interest rates are almost zero. We'll talk about more of this in chapter 7 too. There's really only one direction interest rates are going to go, and that's up. So look what happens if interest rates go up 1%, okay? Look at this right here. 382 goes up 1%. That 1%, and a lot of people are like, oh, don't worry about it. You got to worry about it. You got to understand, long term, that 1% costs us $50,000, people. So that is why you got to know, you got to be dialed in on what's your interest rates on all of your accounts. Your checking, savings, your credit card, your student loan, car loan, home loan, all your investment accounts. You have got to know what the heck's going on with those. Because if you're like, oh, 1%, that's not a big deal. 50 grand isn't a big deal. It's quite a bit, right? Now, look what happens if we cut this rate or cut the time in half. So, okay, I want to pay off my house in 15 years. We drop almost $100,000. Okay, look at that. We drop almost $100,000 in interest. Of course, look what happens to our payment too. Let me go back up. So our payment goes from basically $1,230 to $1,900. Okay, so we add about $600-700 in a month in our payment. We cut off $100,000. Couple of things here, folks. The U.S. is about the only country that does 30-year mortgages. And now you see why the banks want to do that. Most foreign countries, 20 is about the extent of their loan. A lot of them are 10 and 15-year mortgages. Okay.
So what if the property were appreciating in value?
At what, are you asking what rate, Noah, or?
No, I'm just talking about in general, if it was like being flipped or renovated and the value of the property like went up to like 500,000, let's say.
Well, that's good. So if we use this, right? Okay. So now you said flip. So you're like buying the property, doing some renovations and trying to flip it, right? Okay. That can happen. And you see a lot of the shows on that and stuff. Folks, you got to pay you got to know what you're doing to make that happen, right? And if you notice, most of the people doing that are people who are doing the work themselves, right? My wife watches this show, and it takes place in Indianapolis. And basically, these construction folks, they got a bunch of investors, and like they go to downtrodden neighborhoods and they buy a whole city block and then renovate the houses. And they get the houses for ridiculous. No, they're getting them like for $30,000. They're basically stripping them down to the timbers, to the frame, renovating it, putting $150,000 in, and then selling the place for like $230,000, $240,000. And that's kind of what you're talking about, right? So that happens, but you got to really know what the heck you're doing. And you got to be able to do the work. In this situation, what you're hoping for, if you bought the house, Noah, and you held it for 30 years, you're hoping that it's worth more than 432,000 at the end of the 30 years. Because if it's not, then you didn't even keep up with your interest rate. You didn't get 4.25% return, right? If it's worth more than that, then it appreciated more than the interest you were paying on it. And that's kind of what we're hoping for. Because think about this, okay? What is the biggest investment in most people's lives?
House.
Their house, right? Now, Noah, you talked about flipping, okay? So let's say, here you go. You bought this house. Now you got this great investment. It went up, it appraised for more than what after the 30 years, right? So let's say your house is $550,000, but that's your biggest investment. What's the only way you can cash in on your biggest investment?
You sell it.
To sell the house. But where does that leave you?
Looking for another one.
Exactly. So then what do you have to do? So, and again, this is where you got to understand finance. Your home should not be your biggest investment. What do you think your biggest investment ought to be?
401k.
Exactly. Your retirement accounts, right? Because the only way Noah can take advantage of his biggest investment is if he sells the house. Well, then he's homeless. Great, Noah, you got $500,000, but you got no place to lay your head at night. Does that do you any good?
Not in that case.
No, right? So he's got to go find another place. He's either got to find a place cheaper so he can invest the difference and try to live off that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later on. Okay. Now, let's talk about this for just a minute. Let's say Noah wants to pay this house off in 15 years, but he doesn't want to go up to the $1,900 a month payment. Is there a way Noah could do that? Yes. Okay. The way to do that, and again, I like this time of year, is we could so Noah does his taxes, and he's like, man, after everything I've done, and the wife and the kids and my dependents and paying student loans and the mortgage on the interest is deductible, he gets a return of, say, $4,000, right? What do most people do with their tax returns?
Spend it on
Hey,
frivolous
that's
things.
vacation, new car, vacation, whatever. Okay. So Noah goes, you know what? I'm going to take $1,300 of that, and I'm going to put it towards the house. Now he's got $3,200 that he can go do something else with. Right? If he's smart, he'll take about $1,200 and put it away in his retirement account. Then he's got $200 or $2,000 he can go spend willy-nilly, and it doesn't matter. Right? But by taking that $1,200 and putting it on his mortgage, right? So he's going to take it and put it on the principal on his mortgage. So basically what happens is he's here, and now he drops to here. So he goes from, say, 27.4 to 26.5. Okay? By doing that, what that will do over the course of the years, if he does that every year, it'll pay this house off in 15 years. So it'll cut his mortgage in half.
So right, paying a higher principal decreases the interest rate.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're knocking that the principal amount down, and that's what they're charging the interest on. So you're chipping away at that a little faster, so the interest is coming down faster. Okay? Now, let's say Noah decides, man, I don't want to do that. I'd rather take my tax return and use all of that. I want to take my tax return, I'm going to invest half and spend half. Okay? Could he still pay the house off in half the time? Yes. Okay? How do we go about doing that? Well, how often do most people get paid?
Every 2 weeks.
Monthly or bi-weekly?
Every 2 months? Was that you, Matt?
No, I said 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah, I thought Matt said every 2
No,
months. or something like
I
that.
said monthly, so his 2 and then my month probably went together.
Actually, I'm a government employee, so government employees do get paid once a month. They get paid at the end of the month. But Malcolm, you said how often?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks, so bi-weekly. So how many paychecks is that in the course of the year?
20. No, hold on.
104.
104.
No, wait.
No,
It's 21.
20.
I don't know.
Matt gets paid
26.
every 2 weeks, 104 times a year.
26.
No, wait a minute,
26.
21 times a year.
24?
24.
26.
What's that, Noah?
I was saying 24.
24?
It's 26.
26. Guys, how many weeks in a year?
52.
52. If you get paid every 2 weeks, there you go. 26. Okay. So here's the thing, Noah. You want to pay your house off in half the time, right? So if you get paid 26 times a year and you make half your house payment each time you get paid, how many payments did you just make on your house? Don't let Matt do this because I know the half and double stuff kind of messes him up.
So wouldn't you make 26 payments?
Yes, but if you're making half your payment each time, how many
13.
payments total did you make on your house?
Technically 13 then.
13. There's your extra payment a year,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can either use a tax return and do it all at one time, or if you pay half each time you got paid and you got paid bi-weekly, you make 13 payments a year on your house and you cut that down to 15 years. Okay, does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay, now folks, if you do this for 20 years, okay, if you do that on a 20-year mortgage, it doesn't cut it to 10. It's about like 13 or 14 because you don't have that time to chip away at the principal. Okay, but it does still pay it off faster and saves you the interest. So that's a couple of ways you can deal with how much you actually pay for your house and get out of debt faster, save yourself a lot more interest. Okay, does that make sense? Is everybody good? How's everybody doing? All right.
I'm
James is
freaking out.
saying he's good.
Because I'm
What's
doing
that,
my
Malcolm?
I'm doing the the amortization chart here that you put up on there and put my student loan in there, and it's kind of terrifying.
Malcolm, you just, hey, make that extra payment, be chipping away at that principal, man. That's the key thing. You know, and I'll tell you something, folks, it's hard to do. It really is. You know, here's the other thing. When you guys get out of this, so hopefully after this class, you're going to realize, okay, let's avoid debt. So I'm going to pay my debt off as fast as I can. I'm going to invest as much money as I can early on, right? Folks, then you're going to go find a significant other. And if they aren't on the same page, boy, that creates some tension, right? Not only that, like then you have kids. I went and put braces on my kid's teeth the other day. So now it's like, you know, I'm like, he's got all his teeth. They don't, you know, what difference does it make? My wife's like, absolutely not, you know. I didn't have braces, I'm fine. But she wanted him to have braces, so we put braces on his teeth. Well, that's $200 a month for 2 years. You know, I'll take the payment on it. They aren't going to charge me interest, so I'll take the payment on it and put the rest of it, keep putting it in our retirement account, right? My Suburban's got a knock in the engine, so I know that's coming up. So there's always something that will keep you from wanting to invest. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. All right. So guys, any questions on anything we covered today?
Yeah, I've got one. Is this the most common type of loan?
Yes. Yeah, Carter or Caleb, I'm sorry. Your student loan's this way. Your mortgage is this way. Your car loan is this way. If you get a hey, I went and got an equity line on my house to do some, like Noah was saying, hey, I bought this house and I've got, the house is worth 200,000 and I put money down and I got 50,000 in equity and I go pull out some of that to renovate the house and make it worth more. That loan works the same way too. Okay. Pretty much this is going to be 95% of your loans, to be honest with you. Now the business loans, Caleb, are usually, like we said, interest only, because they want you to have the money available to go work your business and grow your business, right? At the end of the loan, when you're supposed to make that balloon payment, if you don't make the balloon payment, do you think they're really upset? Why not?
No, more money for them.
Yeah, they'll look at you and go, hey, Caleb, you haven't missed a payment. Everything's been good. You've been a good customer. We don't want to stress your business out. So let us refinance whatever the principal left is. All that is more money for them. And you're like, man, I can go focus on my business again. And they're like, why don't we buy you lunch? And and you're like, okay. And really, you're buying your lunch for you and them, but that's the way a lot of people will think, because they don't think about it that way. Cool. All right. Questions on anything? Everybody good with perpetuities, effective annual rates, types of loans? We can play with this. I would recommend you guys do like Malcolm did. Take this and use it, play with it. You can download it if you want to have it. This part is on here too, the statement of cash flows. We'll get into this in chapters 1 through 3. So this will be a good little tool, especially if those of you that want to have your own business, you can plug numbers in. It'll help you analyze your business, and you'll see what we're talking about when we get into the other stuff after, when we get into chapters 1 through 4 and all that. But if there aren't any other questions, I'll hang around if you have questions that you don't want to ask in front of everybody. Malcolm, like I said, if you'll hang around, I just got a quick question just for a couple minutes. I won't tie you up. So here's the game plan. So Thursday, what we're going to do is just work with the chapter. We'll calculate interest rates. We're going to calculate retirement stuff. We're going to do a lot of problems and just work with the calculator, work with breaking the periods up and changing the periods from days, weeks, months, back and forth in problems. Then after that, over the weekend, you'll do the homework problems. Next Tuesday, we'll go over the homework and review for the exam. And then Thursday, we'll have the exam. Okay. And if I remember right, that keeps us right on schedule. So the exam would be the 11th, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll see how things go Thursday and Tuesday. But that's kind of
the exam going to be taken during the class period, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, guys. If there aren't any other questions, have a good one. Stay warm, and I'll see you guys Thursday.
Are you going to post this lecture on Azulane?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank
Eventually. Whenever it downloads, Joy, I will.
Okay, just because I forget who emailed me. Someone from the class emailed me just now and said they got kicked out and they couldn't get back on with their Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of which, there we go.